One of my most favourite tools in my sewing and quilting kit is tweezers. They are, I think, the most underrated tool that you can have in your sewing and quilting kit. And in this very quick video, I'm just showing you 6 fun ways that you can use tweezers in your sewing room. So who am I? I am Kim. This is Quilt with Kim. You, my lovely, are very, very welcome. Let's check out the first one. And by the way, if you're wondering why these are so big, these are overlocker tweezers that you can pick up really cheaply from Amazon or your local big sewing shed or even hardware stores. So get yourself some of these and let's go and find out what tips I have for you to use these very underrated tools. So I'm actually going to start with my second favourite reason, and that is when you are stitching seam lines and you need to hold down the fabric underneath your presser foot. Okay, I know this is just a simple piece of fabric and we don't really need tweezers here, but sometimes we absolutely need to hold our fabric in place whilst we are stitching, and our fingers can be just too big to do that. So this is where tweezers come really into their own, because we can get right underneath the presser foot to feed or to help feed our fabric through. I'm not pushing with the tweezers, I'm just holding the fabric down right to the very last minute where the needle can take over. So that's my second favorite reason, is to hold the fabric down whilst we are feeding it through the machine. Okay, what about reason number 2 then? And the next little reason why these beautiful little tweezers will help you in your sewing room is removing pins. Now, sometimes we need to keep the pins into the very last moment and then whip them out. But if it's too close to the presser foot, that is difficult to get your fingers and thumbs in. So if we are stitching and playing chicken with our pins, we can get our tweezers in there and we can pull it out just like that. So that's coming in from that way. And then again, if our pin is the other way, we can do the same thing here. So I'm just getting the needle right up close, and now that pin is trapped, but we can still get that pin out without knocking everything inside. Really, really useful for doing that kind of thing without moving your fabric, losing your stitch line, but still get your pins out. Okay, what is next? So what about when things go a little bit wrong and maybe your thread's got knotted in the take-up lever down here? Well, you can't get your fingers in there, can you? And you may be too scared to take this bit off, and you really don't want to go to an engineer just for a bit of caught thread. But our trusty little tweezers will get in there and remove your thread for you. I have no thread caught up in there, so I'm not going to do this, but I can assure you it is very easy to get your tweezers in there and get out any thread that's caught up or knotted where you can see. And then of course, when we are cleaning under the plate here, the needle plate, and getting right underneath, if you have little bits of lint or fluff that you can't quite get hold of when you're cleaning your machine, your tweezers will help you out on there. These are magic, aren't they? Okay, what's next? What about removing those freezer paper pieces or the bits of paper you've got in the back of your EPP pieces or English paper pieced pieces? That's very difficult to say. Now, don't judge me on these. These are just some demo hexagons that I've used for another video that are languishing in my boxes, but it still remains that these have got a little template in the back of them. Okay, this one's paper, but it doesn't really matter, because when you get your tweezers and it's all stitched in together, this makes it very easy to get in the back and remove your paper templates from your English paper piecing pieces. Isn't there a tongue twister that's Peter Piper picked a pickled pepper? Maybe we could turn that into English, removing the paper from your English paper piecing pieces. There we go, new one. Right, what's next? A quick interruption whilst we're on the subject of essential tools for your sewing room. If you are a beginner, you might want to download the Beginner Quilters equipment list, where I give you the absolute essential items, none of the stuff that you don't need, so you don't waste your money. And you can download this absolutely for free right now. Look in the description below, you'll find the link and it will wing its way to your inbox. Right, let's get on with our tweezers, which oddly aren't in there. So what about when you have been quilting, you have brought your thread through, and then you realise it's far too short to even tie together, let alone thread a needle to sync those threads. Enter our trusty tweezers. Just watch, because our fingers and thumbs get in the way, but we can use our tweezers as a way of tying our knot. Look, I can cross over and I can poke it through, which actually is surprisingly difficult when I'm about 3 foot away, but bear with me for 1 second. There we go. So we've tied our knot, and now we need to get our needle. We need to thread that through the needle and sync our threads, but that is just going to be too short to do that. Now, I know there are people who are going to say, well, just use a smaller needle and a tinier needle, but I can't, because I just can't hold them. So I need a proper sized needle. There are also self-threading needles around. They are definitely worth going for. But if you haven't got any of those, then your tweezers will do. Let me show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle into the fabric as if I was sinking that thread. So can you see it's just sliding alongside our stitch line, just as if you were sinking your threads normally. And then what I would do is get the eye of the needle lined up next to one of these tails, and I can then use my tweezers to just thread that through the needle and pull it through. I was praying that was going to work then, to pull it through, and then I can pull that tail through. And let's just show that it's not a fluke and do the other one. So I'll put the needle, I put the needle in alongside the stitch line so it's ready to pull through. We'll get that in position. You can use your fingers and thumbs if you can do it. I just find my fingers and thumbs are too big to do this, but your tweezers can take the part of this. Let's get everything in camera as well, and I can thread my needle, which you will find a lot easier when you are close up. And then it's like an operation this. There we go. And we've pulled through the other side, and then I am ready to pull that needle through. I have no idea where it is, so ignore the fact this is a bit of a messy bit of quilting. It's only a demo piece, but you've got the idea how good the tweezers are at getting your thread through that needle when you've got two short threads. It is a lifesaver, or at least a frustration saver. Okay, so what is my final and my best way that I use my tweezers for in my sewing room? And if all of those reasons for having these handy little tweezers in your sewing room, we're going to finish with my absolute favourite, which is this, which is when you have threaded the needle on your machine, getting your fingers behind there to pull out the thread leads to all sorts of disaster because you end up pulling everything the wrong way. But with your tweezers, you can just grab it and it all pulls through with complete ease. Now, this is a self-threading machine, so you get the little loop, but if you have to thread it manually and you get the little tiny tail behind there, it's very easy to grab that little tail with your tweezers and pull it through. You can thank me later. So I do hope that has helped. If you've got your own favourite use for tweezers in your sewing and quilting room, please put a comment below and share it with everybody. Let's spread the love for tweezers around the world. If this has helped, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I would love you and leave you for now, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.